My name is Lindsay Grace. I'm the director of the Gaming Initiative at American University, and I've been making independent games for about 7 years, excluding my childhood.
Okay, and why are you here at Boston Fig?
Sure, I'm here to talk about how indies support each other, and this festival is a great example of that. Just basically championing the benefit of community and community organization around independent games and all the potential that comes from that.
Okay, and why should people care about things like Boston Fig?
Sure. Well, part of the strength of the independent games movement, if you will, is the idea that it's a community-oriented situation. So a lot of the really great things that come out of interesting games come from the independent side. And so coming to Boston Fig and supporting these sorts of activities is really essential to helping the world get new, interesting, and exciting games.
Okay. At your position at American University, what sort of work do you do?
Sure. So American University is starting a new initiative around social impact games. We're basically creating independent games to change people's interests, activities, and opinions. What we're trying to do is get people to understand how social impact can intersect with gameplay. So games can teach you about other people's situations or help you understand everything from political campaigns to how to get involved in changing your local community.
So how do you get people interested in serious games?
Sure. So part of the interest in serious games is about trying to engage audiences. So we know that lots of people are playing games, and it seems like it would be really great if we could get that game play to be both pro-social and productive. So why not play a game and help us solve real-world problems, as we do in what we call games with purpose? Or why can't we at least get sort of the same benefit we get from watching a documentary from playing a game? I think this is really important as games mature because just like film matured, what we'll see is that games are going to extend into lots of different facets of our lives.
Okay, what sort of games nowadays can a player look at and say, this is a good example of a serious game?
Sure. So the classic example that everyone starts with is a game called Darfur is Dying, which raised awareness around the situation in Darfur. There are other games that do a better job of perhaps hinting at things we should concern ourselves about. So, one of the games that I think is really interesting is an alternate reality game called World Without Oil by Jane McGonigal, in which people are playing an alternate reality game and actually solving real-world problems around a shortage of oil and trying to change their natural behaviors on a daily basis. And those sorts of games, I think, are really good at helping us solve problems that we could then take into the outside game world.
Why should the average game player care about serious games?
Sure. I think it's about understanding that the game world is a pretty diverse world, and so the same way that people support independent games, they should be supporting serious games. Not all the games are going to be great, just like not all the independent games are going to be great, but the benefit is around understanding that we have a sort of diverse ecosystem of games. And if we want to sort of push the medium forward, we have to explore all the different venues. Serious games is not just limited to educational games. There's also sorts of games that are about just changing the way we view our everyday lives. So if you think about some of the games that were awarded at the Games for Change Festival, games like LIM are in part about understanding how different experiences can affect us. Or games like Papers, Please, which change our empathies towards very complicated situations. And I think one of the big benefits to serious games and social impact games is the idea that we see and do things from someone else's perspective. It's the power of games that I think is unique to games and not necessarily part of another medium.
For the purpose of platforms, where do you find the most serious games? Is it mobile? Is it PC? Is it console?
Well, I think I would jump on the fact that a lot of mobile game development is offering all kinds of inroads that weren't available 6 or 7 years ago. So the idea that you can produce a game for a mobile platform and distribute it worldwide, have automatic translations, and a distribution network that's already sort of present in these environments really does help. So I would say, in general, I emphasize mobile, but it really depends on the kind of experience you're trying to create. So the notion of pervasive games, I think, is a really good one. And those games really need to be played in person with a large group. And so alternate reality games sort of fall in this category as well. I think the ideal platform has to do with the ideal message or the ideal delivery. Who do you want to play your games, and what do you want them to walk away with when they're done playing the game? So I bias towards mobile because I think people are also more willing to take sort of quick chances. Because the general standard for mobile games is small play, they're little games, I think that particularly in serious games, people will say, oh, I don't know what this game is about, but I'll try it. And a good example of that is the mobile game that was released just a few days ago by Chipotle, and it sort of argues for the benefit of the way Chipotle manages their food, so naturally raised meats and sort of organic vegetables.
How do you feel that Boston Fig helps expand the awareness of serious games?
Sure, sure. So one of the things that I think the entire East Coast could benefit from are these sorts of festivals. While they're normally very common to the West Coast, I think the idea that Boston's running its own festival of independent games is a really good sign. And what's really interesting to me is a number of people who are involved in sort of West Coast independent games activities are actually East Coast based. They found better venues or more attention on the West Coast, and it's really wonderful to see East Coast development. Everything from from Boston down to DC, and then Miami's got its own activities as well.
Where do you think that serious games are going in, say, the next 5 years?
Sure, sure. I think what we're going to see is that people are really understanding this notion of persuasive play. So people will begin to be engaged in persuasive play in activities that don't necessarily feel like they're serious games. So the same way that you might really enjoy watching a movie and then discover that that movie had a message embedded into it, people will find the same thing with games. And to a lesser extent, I mean, I think it exists now, but the notion of combining a goal-oriented message into your gameplay experience, particularly into the game mechanics, is clearly growing favor. So there are a bunch of small independent games, 5-minute gameplay experiences that really do endeavor to make a simple argument, and I think they're doing a great job of it. So in the next 5 years, I think you'll see a lot more of that, and the messages won't just be about understanding languages or understanding cultures. They'll be everything from understanding minority issues to understanding how certain problems are solved. The sort of mission that I think you've seen in say, Mole Industria games.
If people are interested in checking out your games or more of your work, where could they go?
Sure. So I have several different collections of games that I run under sort of different monikers. The most exhibited is a collection called Critical Gameplay, and the way Critical Gameplay works is that the games are critiques on the way we play. And so if you go to criticalgameplay.com, you can see the 12 games, all of them I make within a week, and they critique things like, why isn't there more hugging in games? So I produced a game called Big Huggin', or why don't games encourage us to slow down and sort of smell the flowers, which is the game Wait. And then I also have a mobile game practice called Mind Toggle, which is more commercial games with the critical gameplay themes embedded in them. And so the latest game from that is a game called Black Like Me, which is about color matching, but it actually is, and I don't want to give anything away or give a spoiler, but the short version is, if you match by color, you will lose the game, but if you look at it initially, you think it's a color matching game.
All right. Is there anything else you want to throw out?
Go Boston Fig. I'm pretty excited about this.